John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast. John Anik and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John Anik and Kenny Florian.
That's some bang.
Oh, it's going to be back with you. Pay-per-view week. Newark, New Jersey. Memorial Day is upon us. Monday, May 27, 2024. It's episode 488 of the Anik and Florian podcast. We are live today. Always trying to do these fucking things live. I had my Frankie Edgar turquoise shirt on for the show today because, of course, it's a New Jersey pay-per-view. He's going into the Hall of Fame actually 1 month from today. But I sweated through it before the program, Kenny, so we had to go with the IHP Black. But it's nice to see you. Happy belated birthday, Ken Flo, turning 48 yesterday, if my math is accurate.
My man. I feel 68. I feel like I should be collecting Social Security in a couple of years, dude. Going to the early bird special. But I'm feeling good, man. Listen, this is what happens when you live in the South. Now that I'm in the Carolinas, like I totally get it. I'll go outside and I'll soak through a shirt completely because of the humidity. I'm like, well, that shirt's in the hamper and it's done. So I get it, dude. But I'm excited for this pay-per-view, man. Big card.
A couple years into my UFC career, I want to say 2014 or 15, our UFC director, Anthony Giordano, future Hall of Famer, would talk to me about his closet and the fact that everything in that closet was black. And I thought he was crazy. And as I get older, I buy almost exclusively black t-shirts. So here we are. All right, a lot to get into today. We were not with you folks last week. We spent several hours filming some content exclusively for UFC Fight Pass. It is called the Anik and Florian Rewind. So I'm not sure if it's available right now, but basically what we do is we go back and look at a fight involving a pay-per-view headlining athlete, and we provide running commentary. I treat Kenfo like a little bit of a dick, as I've been known to do. But those are exclusive to Fight Pass right now. We look back at Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, and we also looked back at Dustin Poirier in 2019 at UFC 242 against Khabib Nurmagomedov. So those will be available during this here pay-per-view week exclusively on UFC Fight Pass. But a lot of things have happened in the MMA world. So to that end, oh, and by the way, Dan Hardy coming up here in about 12 minutes. We will also talk to new Mansa Joaquin Buckley in about an hour, and the star of the program, Ray Longo, as well. Also coming up on Wednesday, full preview and predictions for UFC 302 and anything we don't get to today. That includes Kenny's wagers for UFC 302. Headlines, though, brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. So John Jones is in the news all the time, and we're going to talk to Dan Hardy shortly about this whole Tom Aspinall situation, the Stipe Miocic fight potentially in November. But John Jones posted something on X comparing himself to Tom Brady, and some people have been critical of that sort of assessment. And oftentimes you have heard me say, Kenny, on these airwaves that if they hung championship banners in Albuquerque, New Mexico for every title fight that John Jones won, they'd have like 15 or 16 banners. And I think some of the MMA fan base doesn't want to equate a single John Jones championship fight win with maybe Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl over the course of a full season. You know, as far as I'm concerned, Kenny, I mean, maybe it's just me with the UFC rose-colored glasses on, but these are individual champions. And even though I would stop at calling John Jones like a 15-time UFC light heavyweight champion, right? I prefer like Zhang Weili and Dominic Cruz as a 2-time champion, right? You lose the belt and regain it, you know? But I don't know. Johnny Bones' comparison against Tom Brady, we'll get to the tweet, but it wasn't totally lost on me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, listen, when you look at what John Jones has accomplished, it's extremely impressive. People forget, you know, we have a lot of new fans that came over. We've talked about this so many times since COVID, right? We have a legion of a whole new class of fans. And a lot of those people didn't have the opportunity to see John Jones in his prime. Now, don't judge John Jones or the current John Jones over the course of his last few fights. The Cyril Gane fight happened really quickly. Not a whole lot to criticize there. You could criticize some of his performances at 205. And when people go back and look at those performances, they're like, this isn't the Tom Brady of MMA. Well, you didn't have the opportunity to see John Jones when he was at his absolute best, when he was a true mixed martial artist of the highest form. This was that new breed. And now you see him doing things at heavyweight, and it's hard to compare, let's say, Tom Brady in his last year in the NFL to, say, Patrick Mahomes in his current form. Now, if we went back a few more years, right? It's different. It's you need to look at athletes and where they are in the trajectory or lack thereof of their career. And I think it's unfair to judge people on that. Yeah, I'll let you jump in there.
So the tweet, hey, Tom Brady, you still look healthy. Give us 2 more Super Bowls and I'll personally be more impressed by your career. And I think you hit on a lot of truths there. I think part of the fan issue, and again, this could be a vocal minority, is just some of the John Jones inactivity. Part of that has been a choice. Part of that has been his lack of health and the torn pectoral muscle that forced him out of the Stipe Miocic fight. And then part of this equation is that we're never going to see him fight Tom Aspinall. And a lot of people believe that Tom Aspinall is not only the best heavyweight in the world right now, skill for skill, but Michael Bisping and others suggest that he could go down as the greatest heavyweight of all time. And he might actually have that type of potential. So I think part of this is just fan frustration with the lack of heavyweight title fights, the fact that we're not going to see John Jones against an arriving at his prime Tom Aspinall, and instead we're going to see him against Stipe Miocic, who last competed at 38 years of age and will be 42 when he graces the octagon against John Jones. So I can understand some of the frustration. But I guess I just think in terms of mixed martial arts, everything that it takes to get through a training camp healthy and to realize success in different eras and in different divisions, I would have loved to have seen sort of a vacation of the title by John Jones after the torn pec, just knowing that there was already an interim champion. But if he was not going to do that, and I don't blame the greatest of all time for not wanting to do that, the promotion was not going to strip him. And that's why we are where we're at, an interim title defense for Tom Aspinall against Curtis Blades.
Absolutely. And if you're going to let a champion hold on to their belt under these types of circumstances, then it's going to be someone like John Jones. I do think he deserves it. He's put in the work. He's been in this sport for a very long time, has competed at the highest levels of the sport, will certainly go down as a Hall of Famer, as one of the best to ever do it. And again, everybody meets their decline. And I don't think it's fair to say, hey, Tom Brady, are you willing to bet right now in 2024 or even 2023 when he was competing or whatever it was, or 2022, to go that you're going to put up better numbers than someone like Patrick Mahomes? It's just not fair, because everyone will eventually meet their decline. Everyone has various ebbs and flows and high points and low points over the course of their career, like when you're just getting started or when you're in your prime or when you start to meet that eventual decline. So, yeah, I just think people are kind of skewed by it, or perhaps don't really know the history of the sport, or aren't really following things logically as they should.
I did maybe hear some part of the fan base that felt shortchanged by the Cedal Gane John Jones fight, right? And part of that certainly was on Cedal Gane, right? But hey, I mean, John Jones, right? He comes back. He's in the heavyweight division. That's the number one guy who's got a shit ton of skills. And that's what Cedal Gane was able to do against John Jones. So we'll see how it all plays out. And I very much look forward to getting Dan Hardy's thoughts just in terms of how the UFC promotionally has handled what is inherently, I think, a tricky situation. So I would sit here and say to you, I would bet my life savings that we never see John Jones against Tom Aspinall. I would have bet a healthy amount of money, Kenny, that we would not have seen Ian Machado Garry against Colby Covington. And I would have been correct in that assessment. Covington not accepting this fight. Now, I can't say whether or not it was offered, but I was not expectant that Colby was going to take this fight. It is going to be Ian Machado Garry and Michael Venom Page at UFC 303 on June 29th. Your thoughts?
Oh, that's an absolute banger. Yeah, and again, I think for Colby, I think he understands that is a very difficult matchup for him against Ian Garry. Or maybe he just feels like his name is too big, and maybe he's looking for an easier fight. I don't know what the answer is in that regard. But MVP versus Ian Garry, give me it. Give me all of it. I want to see that fight. Two very dynamic strikers. Now, will Ian Garry stand up and trade with him? I'm not sure. I think we'll see a little bit of that, but I think we're probably going to see Ian Garry's grappling on full display here. At least we should, because MVP is that dangerous. But for the moments that we do get on the feet, man, is that going to be a good one.
The main event at UFC 304, Leon Edwards taking on Belal Muhammad. And certainly in a meritocracy, you know Belal has earned this. We have talked about guys like Jack Della Maddalena and Shavkat Rakhmonov with all of their UFC momentum have at times put over Belal. And I think just in terms of clarity in this division, in terms of getting some finality when it comes to this series with Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad, this fight absolutely needed to happen. They have combined a win, or at least are unbeaten in their last 24 fights, and the only no contest in those double-digit streaks for both Leon and Belal came against each other. Yes. I think they're both much better than they were in 2021, mentally, physically, emotionally, and otherwise, and pretty close on the number right now. Leon Edwards about a 2-1 favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook in defense against Belal Muhammad come July 27th.
Finally, we get to see this. And I think you're absolutely correct. A lot has changed since 2021. Both of these fighters, I think, are completely different on many different levels, mentally, spiritually, technically. So because of that, I think we're going to get an excellent fight. Now, I think perhaps the shame of it all is the fact that maybe not a whole lot of people are kind of talking about this right now at the moment. Why? Because Leon Edwards kind of disappears after a fight. He's not really the loud, braggadocious type of fighter who's always out in the public eye saying this and saying that and doing that. Same goes for Belal. These are workhorses. These are guys that spend their time in the gym, that understand that, listen, my focus is on getting better as a fighter and becoming the best in the world. And because of that, perhaps some of the marketing, some of the hype of the fight may be lacking, right, from the fan base. I don't think it should. At the end of the day, these are two of the best in the division. I think it's a fascinating matchup, a very interesting matchup, not so clear as to who is going to be the better fighter that night. And because of that, I think it's the right fight. Sometimes as an organization, you have to make the fights that are most marketable, right? To bring in the money. This is a business. But also you have to make the fights that make the most sense from what the two fighters have accomplished and how they're kind of leading up to each other. And I think this was the right one to make.
Cody, if you want to bang a YouTube poll, I am curious for those watching live, who people like in that fight. Leon Edwards minus 198, Belal Muhammad is plus 164. I pushed out an Anik Florian podcast poll question of these two underdog title challengers in the next couple of months, Dustin Poirier and Belal Muhammad, who has a better chance to win. And part of the reason I pushed that out there, in terms of implied win probability, Belal Muhammad has a much better chance than Dustin Poirier, but 50% of our poll respondents believe that Dustin Poirier has a better chance to win that fight. And I'm not even submitting my opinion, Kenny, but I do find it interesting that the fan base, and I knew that in some part the fan base was going to echo a lot of support for Dustin Poirier, but, I think the odds makers and the people who make the numbers, and certainly the early response on the Belal Muhammad side in terms of the action, people understand that Belal is a different guy than he was in 2021. As much as Leon has leveled up, Belal is a much stronger force than he was a few years ago.
No question about it. And so much of how we see things are skewed by whether we like a fighter or not, right? And sometimes liking a fighter doesn't always equate to them having the best chances of winning. So much of it is hopium. And I don't make it as a disrespect to any fighter in particular, but that's just the reality of the game. No one wants to see their favorite fighter lose, and because of that, they're going to give them a better chance or see it in a different way. But I think those odds are about right there.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to our good friend Belal Muhammad on getting the championship opportunity. And he did message me that when he found out, when Lewis Taylor, his right-hand man, alerted him to Dana White's Instagram post, if he wasn't training with all of those Russians in New Jersey, he probably would have burst into tears, because even though he had a date, and I can tell you guys he had the date before the announcement, until Dana White announces it, you still never know. And we signed Belal Muhammad and my twin brother, Jason Anik, 4 or 5 years ago to host Remember the Show on the Anik Florian podcast YouTube channel. And Belal was little known in social media circles. He was unranked as far as the welterweight division was concerned. To see him rise to number one contendership and everything he's doing on behalf of his Palestinian people, he's just a tremendous human being. And we congratulate Belal Muhammad. But now joining us on the line, another great human being, maybe actually a better analyst than he is a human being. I don't know. One of the finest analysts in the MMA space, also the director of fighter operations for PFL Europe, former UFC title challenger, the great Dan Hardy, the Outlaws with us. Dano, great to see you, brother. How are you, sir?
I'm really good. Great to see you two guys. Two good-looking fellas. Look at you both.
Well, thank you, man. Well, we cherish having a quarter of an hour of your time. We informally polled our Anik Florian podcast audience about 6 weeks ago, and the two guests that they most wanted on the show were you and Laura Sanko. So we're trying to deliver for our audience. They wanted to see you, and hopefully you take that as a compliment. I know your schedule is busy with the PFL and commentating and training and coaching your lovely wife, podcasting, full reptile. So how is life, and I guess what is an average week like in the life of Dan Hardy right now in 2024?
Man, well, first of all, thank you for the kind words, and thank you to the podcast fans for mentioning my name. I don't think there is a normal week, an average week anymore. It's what's happening this week and where we're going to be. I'm heading up to Newcastle tomorrow to do some promotional stuff ahead of this PFL Newcastle show. Going to go and see Savannah Marshall and see how her MMA game is coming on. And then obviously, we've got the show, we've got the PFL regular season, we've got Bellator coming up in Dublin, loads and loads of things going on. Just kind of one day at a time at the moment, to be honest, and doing everything to the best of my ability.
I questioned my order of what I wanted to ask you when, and I want to ask you about your wife, Veronica, right here, right now, because she resumed her UFC career shortly after you guys got married, which was December of 2022. And it's been very methodical, very successful ever since. 3 wins in a row across last year and now this year. Still just 28 years old. I'd imagine you're trying to be cautious in your optimism, but seems like you've got some things going with Veronica. So congratulations on that. And how are things going relative to your expectations for her?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, she's doing incredibly well. She's always had the potential. She's a great athlete. She's a great student. She's got loads and loads of experience of martial arts. But the thing that I kind of helped her out with, I suppose, is putting it into a bit of a system so she can apply it better. But everything else is there. I mean, she's got some consistency with her training, and her confidence is on the rise to back up her already formidable skill set. It's really good to kind of watch her grow as quickly as she is. And we're traveling around. We've been training over at Renegade with Leon Edwards and the Renegade team, and down at GB Top Team with Brad Pickett. But I've got to give Henzo Gracie Academy a shout out as well. They hosted us in New York for what was weeks of fantastic information, and just to kind of glimpse at the level of knowledge that some people have in the grappling range. The likes of Kenny Florian, of course. The amount of knowledge that these guys have got when they look at the sport of mixed martial arts, they see it in ways that I am not able to. So it's a privilege to be around people with such incredible minds.
Oh, this guy's very humble. Having spoken with Dan, he's a brilliant MMA mind. But, Dan, I think you're also smart enough to go out and understand that there's other people that see things differently. And, for you as a coach now, the coaching side of you, what has been kind of the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I mean, being honest about the deficits in my skill set is a big part of it. But I've always been good at poking fun at myself. So it's, we have a lot of fun with it. And I clearly know that my ground game is not at the same level that I want Veronica's to be at when she's competing and moving towards a world title. And there are people out there that could not only give her the information and the training that she needs, but also to, help me out as well. It helps me understand martial arts overall better. And, coming from MMA as a striker, I've always tried to systemize the striking ranges more, so it's easier to learn, quicker to learn, and easier to communicate for me as well. And then, you go to somewhere like Henzo's and you see people doing the same thing with the grappling skills, the grappling arts, and MMA as well. We've been working a lot with a guy called Sean Santella, Shorty Rock, and he's a very well-known East Coast MMA fighter, but he's got this incredible wealth of experience when it comes to the systematic application of jiu-jitsu with ground and pound. So we've been learning his trifecta system, and it's been enlightening.
And Dan, now that you're kind of seeing things from a different perspective, putting fights together for the PFL and Bellator, how has it changed your perspective on the fight game?
Man, it's made me hungrier to learn again, to be honest. I always felt when I was competing that MMA was just so incredibly vast. There was so much information out there that I had to try and get my hands on, and I was never going to be able to do all of it. So it always felt overwhelming. And now I've seen people they're looking at mixed martial arts the same way as I'm looking at striking in MMA. They're cutting away the debris on the sides. They're streamlining it. They're whittling it down to the core. Ultimately, what we're discovering is what MMA is in a style in itself. And this is a cycle that's been going on for many, many years. And of course, Bruce Lee and the Tao of Jeet Kune Do being a very kind of groundbreaking book when it comes to the whittling down of martial arts and absorbing what is useful. We're still in that process now. I always say, imagine if you could sit Bruce Lee down in front of UFC Fight Pass or just YouTube for 24 hours and go, hey, dine out. It's gonna blow your mind. Imagine how it would change the way that he saw things in the space of 24 hours. Even if you showed us a calf kick back in at the turn of the millennium, it would have been witchcraft to us at the time.
Yeah. Dan Hardy with us here on the Anik Florian podcast. So I wanted to ask you briefly about UFC 304. I'd imagine with UFC 302 this week, you're getting close to your War Room breakdown for Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier. Is that out yet or no?
We recorded them all yesterday. I did 2 War Rooms, main and co-main event, and then we did the Picks podcast as well. So they'll be up today, tomorrow, and Wednesday on the Full Reptile channel.
All right, you can check that stuff out. Time permitting, I will ask Dano here about UFC 302. But 304, Tom Aspinall and Leon Edwards in Manchester, and Aspinall in defense of his interim championship against Curtis Blades. There are a lot of challenging situations when it comes to this heavyweight situation. John Jones is the greatest of all time. Stipe's status in all of this as well. I think a lot of the fan base really feels for Tom, but I'm not sure the UFC was in a position where they could strip John. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, how you feel like they have handled what I think is just a really messy situation.
It's awkward. I think anytime that an interim title is introduced, it needs to be in the picture for a finite amount of time. And as soon as an interim belt is around someone's waist, the time has got to be ticking until that becomes an actual title. Whether it's months or whether it's, I don't know, any longer than 12 months seems wild to me. Right. That an interim belt would be applied. For me, Tom Aspinall's the heavyweight champion. That is in no way a disrespect to John Jones. He is, one of the kings of mixed martial arts, as is Stipe Miocic. I think the reason why we're in this situation is because we kind of feel bound to a fight with John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. It has to be before a belt. You know what I mean? It was almost like when they did the BMF thing. It's like, well, we can't just do Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. It's more special than that.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we have to kind of hold up the genuine ranking process in order to, express our gratitude for those two guys. King of MMA, make up a new belt. I don't care at this point.
Right.
I've turned the corner on it. I like people have four or five belts and, making a big show of it. I wouldn't mind an additional belt for a John Jones Stipe fight, especially if then Aspinall versus Blades is for the actual heavyweight title.
That's a good way to look at it. And I, too, have come around on extra belts. At first, when the BMF was introduced, I was sort of put off by it. And now I feel like we actually need it as a sport, right, to be able to crown that type of individual. So as far as Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad are concerned, I mean, clearly we can all see the extent to which Leon has leveled up. Maybe Belal doesn't get as much credit for his level. Clearly, the odds makers are paying attention. How do you handicap that fight now that it has been announced, Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad, July 27th?
It's always going to be a tough fight for Belal. I think anybody fighting Leon, especially now that he's got the belt, it's different when you're chasing the belt, but now he's got the belt, he can kind of allow people to come to him and try and get it. And, you watch what he did to Colby Covington. He dismantled him on the way in. And the danger for Belal is getting picked off and worked over as he's trying to get close to Leon. He's going to have to go through the fire, and he's going to have to force Leon to fight at a pace that he doesn't want to fight at. Like, Leon's very, very good at kind of setting a steady pace and then controlling that pace throughout the fight. Like, there have been times when I've been sat octagon side and I'm thinking to myself, it's late second, early third round. I kind of feel like he could put Cowboy away if he wanted here, and they're the times where Belal needs to put his foot on the gas and sometimes take a shot to land 2 or 3, make it a little bit scrappy at times and force Leon out of his comfort zone. Like, the one thing that you can't be assured of is that you can use wrestling offensive to keep Leon on the back foot. Like, I was cage side a few weeks ago, and Clay Collard's corner team were calling for the Leon Edwards. And it's very rare that you get a UK-based fighter being credited for their takedown defense, partly down to my fault, probably, to be honest. But like, his takedown defense against the wall is really fantastic. Yeah. So a lot of energy could be wasted there. And now, obviously, with the striking criteria being emphasized in, close guard bottom or up against the wall, if the person being offensive is not active enough, like, Leon can chip away at him. The onus is going to be on Belal to really keep this fight moving.
All right. Well, that I'm going to ask you about your fighting future every time we talk to you. When you're 50, I won't, but you're only 42. So I'm going to ask you about this because a lot of people don't realize just how many MMA fights you had, right? 36 pro MMA fights, even though a lot of us remember your career as being cut short, right? I mean, it's crazy to think that in your native Nottingham, September 29, 2012, Kenny and I were there, right? Your win over Amir Sadallah was your last fight. And whether it was Diego Sanchez or in another combat sports setting, a lot of us have been hopeful to see you compete again. So why hasn't this competition happened yet? And is it okay for journalists like me to still probe you about
it? you can ask me about it, until I'm well into my 60s. I don't mind. And I'm probably still going to say the same thing. Like, if the opportunity is right and the opponent makes me excited, then I'll fight. Like, I love fighting.
Yeah.
It's not until recently that I felt like things were actually cut short for me. Like, things just moved at such a pace. I was out of competition. I didn't really know what to do with myself for a few months. I was given the opportunity to commentate. I loved that. I loved doing the breakdown shows and stuff like that. So I was just in the flow. And you know what it's like when you're on the UFC train. It never stops. So there's always another show coming, another trip to London to do a breakdown show or whatever. And I just kind of stayed in the swim. And before I knew it, a couple of years had passed. I went and got clearance to fight. I spoke to the UFC and they were talking about different opponents. And, it was names that, honestly, like, I love them as fighters, but I didn't really want to fight them. Like, Joe Lozon was the first name that was put to me. And I'm like, I don't want to punch Joe in the face. I want to give him a hug and play video games with him. It's like, but there are certain fighters out there. Like, I always expected at some point that myself and Tyron Woodley would fight one another. And every time I shake hands with him, it's always a little bit frosty. But I would never turn a fight down if the opportunity is right. I love it. It's in my blood. It's who I am.
Yeah.
Everything else is just a performance to kind of, keep that guy in the cupboard these days. But it's an adrenaline rush like nothing else.
Yeah. All right, I'll get you out of here on this. Every time I check the betting line, it seems like more money is coming in on Islam Makhachev. He's a 6-1 favorite against Dustin Poirier. When you're breaking down a fight like this, that at least on paper, and I know the betting line is but one lens through which to look at this fight, but when you're breaking down a fight that some people suggest is so one-sided, how is that exercise different than, say, a fight that's a pick'em on paper?
I try and think about this from Poirier's perspective and from his camp's perspective, because especially if you've got someone that is so up against the odds like Poirier is in this one and up against people's expectations, I've got to think that they're taking all of this information in, and they're either feeling very different about the fight for one reason or another, or they're taking into account what the general population of the MMA fan base is saying and trying to reverse engineer it in some way. That's what I'd be trying to do. Like, I don't know whether this whole guillotine thing is a bit of a game to stop Makhachev level changing and try and get him to use upper body takedowns and trips and reaps. the downside for guillotines is that, I know it's one of the most successful submissions in all of mixed martial arts, but that's because fighters are spamming it every weekend. Like, how many times do you see someone jump on a guillotine and not get it?
Right.
So and we've seen it from Poirier. He tries it over and over again. I don't think he's going to be that stupid this time around, because if he ends up on the bottom, he almost always exposes his back, and that could be the end of the line against Makhachev. I think we're going to see Poirier wrestling offensively. That's what I think we're going to see, because that's the most outside of the box thing that I could think he would do. Like, take it to Makhachev, force him to grapple, put him on his back, see if he can make him uncomfortable. Every other route for me is a dead end, even if he decides to keep it striking. I feel like Makhachev's level of striking now, as well as the predictability of Dustin's striking game, with all due respect.
Sure.
You're not seeing new things in his game, but we still see new things every time with Makhachev.
Yeah. Well, you can get Dan Hardy's analysis further on the Full Reptile YouTube channel. Nothing better than the War Room. And I've said this repeatedly. There may be analysts as good as you, Dan, but there's nobody better. I know how hard you work. I know how obsessed you are with this stuff. And as I say to Ken all the time, I hope to crack a mic with you at some point before all is said and done. But appreciate your time at Dan Hardy MMA on Instagram. Best to Veronica, and hope to see you in Manchester, brother.
Thank you very much, guys. I'll speak to you both very soon. I look forward to it.
All right, there he is, former UFC world title challenger and now the director of fighter operations for PFL Europe, Dan Hardy, with us here on the Anik Florian podcast. It is interesting when you think about Poirier and Makhachev. I know you're saving your bullets for later in the week, but can you just sort of give me a little bit based upon what Dan just said there?
Yeah, listen, I think that he's not wrong. I think that there's a reason why there's such a huge disparity in the odds as of right now. I think a lot of things came together for Dustin Poirier at the right time in regards to Islam Makhachev. Dustin is a game fighter who should never be underestimated. However, I think it's a great breakdown and analysis by Dan Hardy, just based on Islam Makhachev's wrestling, his takedown ability, his control, his submission ability, and maybe he's even getting better as a striker as well.
All right, thanks to the great Dan Hardy, Ray Longo, and New Mansa Joaquin Buckley, also scheduled to join us here over the next hour or so. UFC 302 bringing the Octagon back to Newark for the 10th time this weekend. And while I can't guarantee there will be 10 times the action, I can say this: you do not want to miss out on any of the action over at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. And what a fight card we have got in store. Massive stakes at middleweight in the co-main, and of course the undisputed UFC lightweight title fight on tap as well. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. Just make a minimum deposit of $5, and you will get a bonus bet back in the amount of your original bet if your first bet does not hit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, not now, but right now. Use code AFPOD. That's code AFPOD for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet does not hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario, one no sweat bet per new customer. Issued as one bonus bet based upon amount of initial losing bet. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/MMA for eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. So did you happen to see, I don't know if it was A1 Combat, Uriah Faber submitting your broadcast partner, Jeff Glover? Did you see that?
I did not. When was this?
Well, it's combat jiu-jitsu, right? So, Uriah's fucking slapping him in the head. It was absolutely fascinating. But yeah, he got a choke there. Got Jeff Glover to tap, and everybody was pretty. Yeah, TJ DeSantis going crazy on the call. It was pretty cool.
This was this past weekend.
I think it was like last night, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
I got to check.
You'll have to check that out. You'll have to check that out. All right. So UFC 302, UFC 303, UFC 304. Lot of different things that are coming up, and it's very exciting to have arrived at this pay-per-view week right here, right now. On Wednesday, Ken Flo and Brian Petrie will give you, I think, 8 predictions for UFC 302. But it is interesting when you hear Dan Hardy talk about Leon Edwards, and we can talk about Belal Muhammad beating Gilbert Burns in relative health on short notice, knowing that he was potentially going to have to wait a year plus, not unlike Alexandre Pantoja. but I really am curious to see how this matchup plays out, because when you look back at the 2021 meeting that ended unceremoniously with the eye poke, Leon Edwards really was having his way on the feet, and perhaps Belal and others would take exception with that statement, but he was really doing a good job there. That was a 25-foot octagon, no crowd. But you think about all the championship experience and training that Leon Edwards has accrued since that point in time. You know, I do think it stands to reason this is the toughest matchup across this welterweight division for Belal Muhammad.
No question about it. And I agree with you, John. I think that he was having his way with Belal. However, this is a huge advantage for Belal. It's like now he knows what he's in for. Now he knows exactly what Leon Edwards is about and what he needs to prepare for and where he needs to improve. So I think this was kind of a blessing in disguise for Belal. And if there's a guy who knows how to approach this, from a strategy and tactics standpoint, and if there's a guy who has the composure to go out there and execute, it's Belal. You know, he's a very intelligent fighter. He always seems to shine when he needs to. And I think having that experience against Leon Edwards is going to be very helpful as they approach their next fight.
You know, that Khabib rub is pretty powerful, and a lot of you on social media have probably seen Belal alongside Khabib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev as he gets ready for this weekend. And I do believe that there is an opportunity, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, for Belal to go to Dagestan for a chunk of this training camp, you know. But how do you quantify that Khabib rub, right? He was in his corner for the Sean Brady knockout, and I don't know if he would be in his corner here on July 27th in Manchester, England. I tend to doubt he would be, you know, but I don't know, man. I don't know that there's any overstating just how valuable that is for Belal to be around those guys. And Khabib in particular just doesn't get any better than that.
Well, I certainly think it kind of acts as kind of a battery in some ways, in that it charges you up, knowing that you have one of the best fighters to ever compete inside the octagon, giving you instructions on fight night. That, you know, there's some kind of recipe that has been quite successful over there in Dagestan that you can kind of emulate and turn to. So, and just a matter of like Khabib, his presence when he walks in the room, the kind of confidence that he displays, all the experience that he's accrued from his father, and from his own experiences as a competitor is invaluable. That is huge. Now, it's especially important if you do have the idea that you want to go out there and out grapple your opponent, which I think will be a component. I'm not sure Belal is that high level wrestler necessarily, but he can take people down. He can take people down and control them. And I think that's only going to get better in training with guys like Khabib Nurmagomedov and all the guys that he has underneath his wings. Is it going to be the best method here against someone like Leon Edwards, where he will most likely have to rely on his striking skills? I'm not so sure, but from a strategy and tactics standpoint, I think it will be helpful. Can they help his striking? It's possible. But just training with those guys and having that high level sparring and high level corner, it's going to help. No question about it.
Got to be working on that rear naked choke if you're Belal Muhammad, you would think. All right, Ray Longo coming up in 60 seconds, but Cody, actually, our producer, Code Blue, Cody Merrill, was able to chase that video for you, Ken Flo, of Uriah Faber submitting Jeff Glover here on UFC Fight Pass. So we're going to roll that tape. This is the end of the fight.
Has him in the crucifix with the rear naked. Uriah Faber. That is awesome, man. I saw him a few weeks ago. Well, I guess last time I was in Vegas. And it's always great to see Uriah, man. He's always smiling and still competing. And Jeff Glover, dude, Jeff Glover in his prime was one of the slickest grapplers in the world. Like, I remember when I was probably a brown belt, maybe I was a black belt at a certain point, and I saw this young, he was probably in his teens, he was a purple belt back in the day. Jeff Glover was he was unbelievable. I was like, how is an American moving like that with all those fancy moves? But Uriah, he still got it on the mat, dude. That's great.
At Anik Florian Pod, if you want to see Ken Flo in that A1 combat, slapping dudes in the face. No elbows, though, Kenny. Keep those elbows in check.
I'm out.
All right, let's get to the star of the Anik Florian podcast in the Ray Longo Minute.
Now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
Imagine having the balls to say on a hot UFC mic, not that you care about being mic'd up, but I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
Ooh.
What a savage you are, right? I mean, you're not talking about optics in the corner. You're talking to your pupil about punching a hole in his opponent's fucking chest.
Ray Longo would have gone straight to jail if Chris Weidman punched the hole in his chest. You realize that. You would have been in jail right now.
And I would have taken it. I would have taken it and been happy.
I found myself Googling actually a few days ago what you do if your dog ingests cannabis. Can you go to jail for that? Can you go to jail for that in the state of Florida? I don't think you can.
Well,
but man, my dog was pretty disoriented for 3 hours. I was freaking out.
Oh man,
I was freaking out.
Who's gonna find out? We just bury him in the backyard, John. Who's gonna know?
You were freaking out more than your dog, John.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how like cannabis got in my backyard, but my dog ate a nugget and she was drunk driving for 3 hours. I was freaking out.
John started. You know what he did, Kenny, to just hedge on his bets? He's put a couple of his dog is missing signs on the trees just in case the dog went south. He was going to bury that dog in the backyard and say that dog ran away.
You should have just given it some video games and Doritos. He would have been all set.
You're right. You're right. Yeah. I don't know why my neighbors are storing their cannabis in my backyard, but that's neither here nor there. How are we doing, Ray Longo? Missed you last week, buddy. How we doing? Looks like you're you look tan, you look healthy, looks like you got a haircut, you're looking good.
Well, feeling good. We had great weather in New York, man. I'm enjoying every second of it. So a lot of bike ride and we're working out. People are killing it. We had a couple of big wins in the gym. We had actually a lot of wins in the gym, but in that 1 week, James Gonzalez had a big win. Damian Nelson put on a clinic up in Boston against one of your Bostonians.
Yeah,
I don't know what planet that kid was from. You gotta look at that fight, Kenny.
Really?
The guy had a Spider-Man costume on in his corner the whole fight. Full Spider-Man costume. Hey, what's going on up there?
I don't know.
The kid was like 6-0. You got to look at the fight. I don't know what I was looking at. I mean, he seemed like a nice kid, but wow.
That's your homework, Kenflo. Look up the Damian.
You got to look it up. Yeah.
I got to try it.
But his spaceship might have already taken off, so I'm not really sure if you're going to catch him.
Did any of your fighters lose spectacularly over the weekend or no?
No, we had the week before. I tell you, Matt's daughter did a jiu-jitsu match in a big on one of our fight cards. The kid is Angie. Shout out to Angie Serra. She's a beast. Awesome. We had Greg Tile win a big match, kickboxing match. Dave won. Donnie Arani won the title. Oh, matter of fact, and Damian Nelson won a title up there. That was for a title. So he got the New England belt, which is phenomenal. He put on a clinic. You got to go look at the fight.
It's UFC 302 fight week. I mean, how many times do you want me to go look at this fucking fight? I mean,
come on, what are you doing? You had a whole week off last. We could have did this last week.
Yeah, we could have. You're right,
but we did.
We needed to.
So I got to make up for lost time. And, Rob Schultz, he didn't get the nod, but one of the best kickboxing matches for that level I've seen in a long time. He did no winner or loser in that fight. It was a great fight. So everybody crushing it.
Ray, how old is Angie right now? Sorry, John.
She's 15. 15. Wow. She looks phenomenal. Takedowns were on point, composed. You know, at that age too, to want to be in there and to not get rattled. I mean, there was definitely 1,000 people there.
She's a Sarah. Come on.
100%. And he's the happiest. You want to see a happy dad? Look at that guy when his daughter's in. It's phenomenal. It's really it's a pleasure to watch. It really is good, really good stuff, man.
So when I went through an ESPN question formation seminar back in the day, they tell you not to ask yes or no questions, but I feel like sometimes it's okay. Ray, do you wear a bicycle helmet?
No.
I can tell because you got all that beautiful, olive brown skin there on your forehead. No helmet for me, huh?
Well, you know what it is? I go through the neighborhoods or I'm on a bike track, so it's pretty safe. I'm not venturing out on listen, I don't even want to go actually drive my car anymore. The people are insane. Is it that happening in Florida where the driving is just freaking New York
Bad where
is,
I'm at. No one uses their signal. People just
No.
go wherever they want. It's crazy.
Kenny, I can't even explain to you what I'm looking at. And
Yeah.
another kid came in the gym, I think it was yesterday, and he said he witnessed a girl hit a car, and he said she took off. They were on, she hit the back of the car, took off. He follows her because he sees the whole thing. She gets off the next exit. He said when she realized he was following her, she started driving on the sidewalks to get away from him. I mean, this is crazy. I mean,
I remember I was leaving an overnight shift in Bristol, Connecticut, and I tried to lose a cop on 84. And
No
I
way.
didn't lose the cop.
Yeah.
What a dumb fuck, right? Like I was all right at 25. I made some good decisions. 27, 29, like what an idiot, trying to lose a cop.
It's circumstantial. I mean, if you could have had a couple of hiding spots, I get it, but I hope it wasn't on the open road.
Yeah, just dumb. Anyway, Ken Flo, I'm sorry. I cut you off twice, please.
No. That's crazy. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. All right, Ray.
What else?
Pay-per-view week. Oh, we got a lot. We got a lot today. I mean, where do you want to begin? I mean, I would love to ask you about Lerone Murphy if I could spend 60 seconds on that real quickly. Did you see that last UFC main event? I only bring it up in this context, right? Because, and I hope this doesn't come across as a shot at Super Sadiq Youssef, one of my favorites, right? But Lerone Murphy was able to do with a main event against Edson Barbosa everything that Sadiq Youssef wasn't necessarily able to do, which is to say, he was able to state to the MMA world, look at me, like I'm here, I'm elite, I'm ready for prime time. Like what a fucking performance for the still undefeated Lerone Murphy. Ray Longo, your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%, man. Boxing was on point. I think he controlled the whole fight. Barbosa is still tough as nails, but probably, half step behind a little bit. But, you could see Barbosa, like back in the day, he was like, things were just quicker, but he still got it. But this kid just was younger and just was a half step ahead, and he had powerful hands, and he put on a great fight.
Kenny, you had a big straight bet on Lerone Murphy, also Chaos Williams.
Nice.
What'd you think of Lerone, the Miracle Murphy, Ken Flo?
I think he looked great. And I think where Sadiq Youssef failed was kind of in potentially in the mental department. To me, Lerone Murphy seemed tuned in and turned on. He was ready to compete and win that fight. He consistently pressured Edson Barbosa, and he threw volume. That's what you got to do. You got to throw volume, and you got to put Edson Barbosa on the back foot. If you allow him to come forward and throw all that offense, you are going to be in trouble, because I agree with you, Ray. I think Edson is a tad slower, but a tad slower is still extremely dangerous for someone like Edson Barbosa. He's got so much offensive firepower. You have to take that away from him, and that's where Lerone Murphy succeeded in on all fronts. Whether it was with his striking, like his boxing, like Ray was talking about in the pocket. I thought he was kicking very well, disrupting the rhythm of Edson Barbosa really well, and he was successful on the takedown attempts as well. So the pressure, the pacing, the conditioning, he was firing in all cylinders, and what made it all the more impressive is the fact that this kid isn't fighting every 3 months. He's taken this time off, whether it's by mistake or on purpose, whatever it is, it's working. He knows how to compete at the highest levels now. He is elite. That's the way, when I was watching him, watching his previous fights, I was like, where's the hiccup? What am I not seeing? This kid is elite and going to be elite. And that's why I was so confident in him. He proved me right, thankfully. Doesn't always turn out that way. But Murphy's a problem, man. He's a problem.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the key, Kenny, that you said is Barbosa, even in his prime, always had problems with pressure.
Yes.
I mean, if you let him lead the dance back in the day, you
can't do it.
You can't do it. But if you keep him on his back foot, like you said, and pressure him, and to pressure him, you need the power to do that. And Lerone Murphy 100% had the power. I mean, if you don't have the power, you're not going to pressure Barbosa. But the guys that have that one big shot or can put combos together moving forward, I think he always had a problem with that.
Yeah.
So one fighter said to me recently, man, Dustin Poirier being that big an underdog against any fighter is crazy. But then when I turn the Islam Makhachev film on, maybe I understand why. So Ray, we have a huge spread this weekend for this undisputed UFC lightweight title fight. Islam Makhachev now north of -600 on DraftKings Sportsbook as the betting favorite against Dustin Poirier. I'm curious what your expectations are for this pay-per-view main event.
Man, I expect Islam to do what he always does, and I mean, he's going to get the win. Unfortunately, I think Dustin's unbelievable, but I just, he's getting older. I just don't see. Yeah, I'd like to see him go for the guillotine about 5 more times. So I would love that. But
Is
that's
that
what I say.
sarcasm or no?
Oh, that's sarcasm.
Oh, okay.
Well, even he's sarcastic about it. So it's not. I'm not saying anything.
So do it. All right.
That's the wrong guy. That'll be the
over under
wrong
half
guy
a guillotine attempt, Kenny. Over under half a guillotine attempt in the fight for Dustin Poirier. He has
absolutely
to be
100%.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
He's listen, he has fun with it. I love the way he answered the question, but Islam's too squared away. That's what I'm saying. He's not Saint Denis or whatever that kid's name was again. Benoit Saint Denis.
Right.
But this guy's, that's why when you look at his tape, that's why you start going, maybe the odds are correct. Even against a guy like Dustin. I mean, Islam's for real. I mean, there's no hiccups in him either at this point. Maybe Dustin could find one. But we'll see what happens. But I think it's pretty safe to say Islam's going to win that fight.
It is pretty amazing, Ken Flo, that Ray cornered against Benoit Saint Denis. And now can't even remember the guy's fucking name.
What's his name? The French guy. Hey, well, listen, what about the co-main event?
That French guy that head kicked one of your pupils out of the rankings? That guy? Yeah.
What's his name again?
I'm not going to say it. I mean,
Benoit Balls.
Benoit Saint Denis. Yeah.
Benoit Balls. I know the guy well. No, he's listen. That guy's a good guy. I'm horrible with names. What can I say?
I'm just messing with you. Just messing with
French
you.
Guy, good guy. Don't know.
Please. Hey, by the way, did you wish Ken Flo a happy birthday? It was his birthday yesterday, Ray.
No way.
Yeah. Didn't you just have a birthday too, Ray?
68.
I was. The 20th was my birthday. The day we took off.
Yeah.
I thought we were coming on just for my birthday, and Cody goes, "What are you kidding me? This guys ain't coming on."
We missed Ray's birthday. I mean, we got Cody May 15th, and you May 20th, and Ken Flo May 26th, and Frank Mir in there. I can't keep it all track.
Wow.
But
Wait, Kenny, how old were you?
GSP is like 19th or 20th.
How old were you, Kenny?
Company, Ray.
How old were you?
I just turned 48.
Oh wow, that's great.
What does that sound old to you? Does 48 sound old?
48's actually a baby. How's that?
See? Okay, there you go. That makes me feel better.
48, I was still sick in the head, so you got a long way to go.
But you reacted as if you were surprised that he is that old, correct?
I think he looks younger than 48.
That's what I'm saying, though. You're like, wow, 48. I said to my wife, hey, Kenny's 48 today. She's like, fuck. Yeah. Right?
That's a hot 40. Your wife said that's a hot 48-year-old.
No, well, no doubt. I mean, we talk about his looks all the time. But,
what,
it's
Kenny,
interesting.
I want to mention to Kenny, too. We started training the FBI at the school. We got like a contract for once a month. So,
dude, that's awesome.
I don't know why I was thinking of you, but I told you I always wanted to hook my buddy up with you. You guys, same mindset, loves all of that stuff. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Good stuff,
listen,
though.
I want to talk about the other 5-rounder. We have Strickland taking on Paulo Costa, which I think is a really interesting matchup. I'm not exactly sure which way I'm going to go at this stage, but I don't know. How are you handicapping that fight?
Man, I kind of like Strickland in that fight. I think Costa's going to give him the fight he wants. I think Strickland could take a punch. I think Strickland's mentally tougher, in those scenarios. I think Strickland navigates. I think he's going to navigate that pretty easily, believe it or not.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I think the other guy's going to give him the boxing match he wants, throw a couple of kicks in here and there, but nothing that I don't think he could rattle. He'd have to catch him. I mean, he's got the power, but I just don't think he's got that snap and that speed to like what Pereira did to him. I mean, he's a big, strong guy, but I think Strickland, he's got to be used to seeing that 1,000 times over. So I think Strickland gets the job done. I think that's a really good fight for him.
So where will you be this Saturday, June 1st for UFC 302, Ray?
I
mean, heaven forbid you come say hello and attend the pay-per-view. I know you like to keep a low profile, but it's not that far.
You're coming into town? Are we getting together? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I mean, I'd be happy to break some bread, you know. I don't know. We missed Buffer's birthday as well. I was going to say, you know.
Shoot, man.
Yeah.
Are you staying in Jersey or New York, Johnny?
Yeah,
I'm staying right in Newark, belly of the beast.
Okay.
So,
belly of the beast.
Yeah.
We got to get you to New York, no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, I mean,
hey, Ray's not hanging out in Newark, John. Okay,
Yeah.
no, he's not.
Brick City, Redman.
I actually might. I think I'm gonna end up in the Bronx. At Armando's got a social club over there. I might just. He asked us to go, so we're thinking about it. But I think if Armando's listening, I think we're coming.
Armando, the social
Armando
club.
get you.
I want to go to this social club.
I know.
It sounds fun.
Nah, you're not allowed in.
Come on.
Couple other questions. With
You're
Ray
always
Longo.
welcome, Kenny. You know
We
I'm
are
only I
scheduled-
don't even like saying that to you. I like saying it to him.
We are scheduled to be joined by welterweight contender Joaquin Buckley here in about 5 minutes, but we do have 5 minutes or so with Ray Longo. Sorry, I just got a message there from my twin brother. Thinks that I'm, being disrespectful or something. I don't even fucking know. All right, so this is a question. It's a rather serious one.
Ooh.
So I don't know why I stumbled upon this feature several weeks after UFC 301 on ESPN.com, but it was Anthony Lionheart Smith talking about his fear of retirement and how purposively his adult life has been centered around chasing 10 pounds of gold, right? And once that goal maybe, and Kenny, I know, is nodding his head in affirmation, once that goal is no longer, like, who am I? What am I? So, Ray, I don't know where your obligation begins and ends as a coach, but certainly there are fighters who walk into your gym with varying degrees of potential, but some fighters go all in, and 15 years later, they're not going to have financial gain. They might have head trauma. So where does your obligation begin and end when it comes to, trying to establish something else in life, even if it relates to mixed martial arts, so that when that day comes, they're of a better disposition in terms of their mental health and everything?
But look, it's 100% discussed. I'll give you a good example. Right now, we have a kid, Anthony Delemy, great kid, 6-0, should be on the Contender Series this summer. But he's at the academy to become a court officer. So that's a job with benefits, and I tell him, 20 years from now, you'll be ahead of everybody with all the bennies if you do the right thing. So I like the guys that have something second. Again, it's only 4 months, so he's going to be back to training, and that's his dream, is to get in the UFC, which he definitely belongs at this point. So we discuss it. You know what I mean? It is discussed, like the money. Everybody's complains about the money, and if you don't hit it right, I mean, when you see a guy, was it Michael Johnson that said he can't pay his rent or something?
Yeah.
The guy's been in there for 11 years. Like, if that's not scaring the shit out of you, I don't know what is. But look. Our gym, the guys have been lucky between Matt and Weidman, Aljo, Marab, Al. They all did really well. They're all doing well for themselves. Fravola's, even he's got a great family. He's got a great thing going on over there. So the guys that have something to fall back on, or the guys that can make it, there's not a problem. But if you don't have that safety net, you really have to think twice about what you're doing, because you're right. You don't want to be 12 years down the line and really have not much to show for it. And then what are you going to do at that point if you don't have a skill set or something doesn't happen? So, you got to be careful. I think you have to be careful, but we talk about it. And again, I like the guys that they hedge on it. They get a good job, and they could always go back to it.
I mean, Kenny called UFC 83. He called a pay-per-view before he even fought for the title. So, Kenny, I'd imagine at some point maybe there was some anxiety or worry, but a lot of your second career was sort of foundationally laid before you even retired.
Dude, I definitely did not do this myself. I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time, and to have people who offered a lot of things that were extremely helpful down the line. A lot of people are like, well, how did you plan this? Like, it seemed like you set this thing, perfectly for yourself. I wish I could say that. I just kind of put my head down and worked hard, and luckily, opportunities were really presented to me on my lap. So I feel so blessed. And that has been the real struggle for me, is seeing a lot of these talented fighters and former elite world-class fighters who are now struggling now. And, it's, man, it's savage out there. The things that happen outside the cage oftentimes are more difficult than what happens inside the cage. And you have to do your best to understand that tomorrow is not promised, and what you're able to do to set yourself up for the future is extremely important. How you spend your money, how you invest your money, it is not an easy thing. And I've seen so many fighters, whether it's boxing or MMA, guys that just didn't manage it properly. At one point they were doing well, and now they're not. I mean, this isn't something that's exclusive to the fight game either, right? I mean, how many celebrities, how many musicians, how many guys that were doing great and all of a sudden are not? So it's an issue for anybody who's in the limelight. People think, oh, that guy's on TV, he must be killing it. No, not necessarily.
Oh God, that's the biggest thing. They think everybody's raking it in. But and Kenny, from your era, I mean, think of the guys. Where the hell are they now? Some guys that were really tough guys, and even a lot of guys you probably fought. What the hell are they doing?
Right.
So it does get scary. Even for me, people ask me how I did it. Man, at this point, I'm like, man, maybe right place, right time. But I would do, like, we're trying to get the school going in like a different direction. Like,
we can tell
do everything the opposite of what I did, because I don't know what the hell I was doing. I just was having fun, and I knew, something was going to happen. But there was nothing in cement for sure. I had a weird way of doing everything. Like, again, never had a contract with anybody. I never really cared about that. I just wanted to see guys succeed. And I think through doing that, I succeeded. So it all worked out good. But I really wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
The new Instagram is at Longo's MMA. A few years ago, Ray, I mean, not to go too far down this path, but there were some really challenging times and conversations a few years ago, right? Despite, obviously, what the public sees of you realizing this great UFC and MMA success across several different eras, right? There were some tough times around COVID and everything else.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. That was another thing. Then what do you do? Look, COVID kind of split the team up. So that's probably, at this point, because I'm getting older, it's never coming back. We had a really tight group of guys, and people started moving. You start losing, like, Weidman was a great guy to have at the gym. He was always, insightful and intelligent. Aljo, Marab being, the heart and soul of the team. He's always doing something. So when you start losing, those three guys alone, could take you down. Like, you know what I mean? But we were deep enough to keep going, and everybody did their best to try to stick together. But it was definitely a trying period for sure. 100%, John, on that. You didn't know what the future held. You didn't know when the thing was going to end, if it's coming back. And, that was the other thing. It could have happened. It could happen again. And then you would definitely down. Look, Matt lost one of his schools, and it turned out to be the best thing he ever did. But he had to get rid of a really big and nice school. So,
and someone in the YouTube comments shouting out your guy, Raging Ally Quinta, as the OG of figuring out his next thing. And it can also, though, not work out, right? I mean, Henry Cejudo, I think, was chasing real estate gains as well. And maybe he is doing fantastically, but he did come back to fighting, right? And he's fought twice since retiring, So, yeah, how about Raging Al, right? I mean, being convicted in that decision and not looking back.
Yeah, 100%. Great kid. Just had his 1-year anniversary. He opened up his real estate business, and he's going to do great. There's no question about it. He's doing great. These guys, the guys that did it right and they hit it right, it is a good start. You know what I mean? If you could get out of there at like 35 and you put away some money, it's a good start to your life. And these guys all did the right thing. Aljo, they invest in houses, and things just worked out. So I don't worry about any of those guys. They're all doing well, and like, again, if they do well, I do well. I mean, even mentally, I'm saying, it makes me feel good that I did the right thing, instead of having a bunch of guys that are, homeless, living on the street. These guys are all, they're all killing it. They're all living their best lives. I mean, it's not over for obviously Aljo yet, but the guy's having a blast.
Oh, look at his bank account, right? And look at his
Listen.
head coach's skin. I mean, look at your fucking complexion. Hey, we got Joaquin Buckley here, so we got to let you go, Raymond, but you look great. Unless you want to stick around for New Mansa, which you're welcome to do, but I think we're going to let you go.
I'm going to get the hell out of here.
Get out of here.
I got to get to the, Aljo's at the gym. I haven't really seen him yet, so I want to go down and see him.
Aljo.
Have a great day and a better evening. You're the best.
Yeah,
We
Ray.
love you.
Take it
Happy
easy, guys.
birthday.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Ray Longo with us every week here on the Anik Florian podcast. And now with us on the guest line, I love this guy, the number 11 ranked UFC welterweight contender out of St. Louis, Missouri, USA. New Mansa, Joaquin Buckley is with us. Congratulations on the win, man. How we feeling?
Man, we feeling good, man. I just want to say, man, first off, bro, thank you for having me on the show, bro. You a real one. Out of all the people that you work with, you the realest, the real deal, almost like Holyfield, you know what I'm saying? Like John Anik in the motherfucking building, man. I appreciate you, dog, for having me.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And there are certainly fighters on the roster who don't necessarily subscribe to what you just said. But in all honesty, I'm really just trying to call it like I see it. And I just have a lot of respect for everything that you've done. And to think about where you are in terms of your UFC progression, right? Like I think back to UFC 282. In December of 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
The knockout loss to Chris Curtis. At that point, you lost 2 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
You're 7 fights removed from maybe the greatest knockout in UFC history against Impa Kasanganay. And now look at what you've done with the 2 years since. So I guess it's a pretty good jumping off point for our conversation. Like take me back to that moment at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Where are you at with your mindset?
So with taking that loss from Chris Curtis, right? I think for me personally, every loss that I had, I've definitely learned from, but particularly with the Chris Curtis loss, right? I learned that first off, this sport is not about ego, right? It's not about, not having respect for your competitors, because at the end of the day, if you don't respect your competitors, they're going to make you respect them, right? At the time, I didn't respect Chris Curtis for his abilities at the time, because I really thought that, I was better at that time and at that moment. But with all that being said, one thing that I learned from Chris Curtis, when you got power, you can be patient, right? You don't have to rush things. You don't have to force things to happen. You can allow yourself to allow things to open up and allow your opponents to expose themselves. And then that's when you take advantage, right? So that's one thing that I took away from the Chris Curtis fight as a personal, one-on-one tip from Chris Curtis. But overall, I realized as well, I said, man, 185 it's not for me.
Right.
I had to move down. I was already planning on moving down to welterweight after my Nasruddin fight. But, yet again, ego, yet again, money, right? A lot of things clouded my vision and clouded my judgment in order to move down to welterweight. And that's why I took the Chris Curtis fight, right? So I kind of, I wouldn't say fucked up my career type shit, but at the end of the day, like I feel like I made a mistake because I took an unnecessary loss, right? I feel like that I didn't need to.
Right.
But regardless, though, without that loss, I wouldn't have that same type of mindset that I do now, which is, like I said before, taking the ego out of it and just allowing this shit to be all about business, and also having the respect for each and every person I get in there with. So every time I train and every time I get ready, I respect people like they're a world champion. That's how I look at every one of my competitors. Everybody's a world champion. Yeah.
Well, and the results have been there. 4 straight wins. You just beat Nursultan Ruziboyev in St. Louis. And the capstone moment, of course, is you being the undisputed UFC welterweight champion. But I got to think, man, 10, 15 years from now, when you reflect upon that night in St. Louis, to have 20,000 people, eating out of the palm of your hand and be able to put on for your city, like, short of a world championship, I'm not sure how much better it really gets than being able to put on for an arena in your hometown like that.
The only way it get better is if I'm actually fighting for a belt in my hometown, in my city, right? I think that's the only thing that can come as close as that moment, because that was big. That was a big moment, man. They put a big boy in front of me, 6'5", from the mountains, right? The boy hungry, want to make a name for himself on a 10-fight winning streak with all knockouts in the first round. Everybody, even in my hometown, like, bro, we don't know how you gonna do it.
Right.
So a lot of people doubted me. A lot of people didn't have me picked to win this fight. But regardless, though, I was confident in my abilities. I knew what I was capable of doing, and I knew that I was gonna show out for this fight. Because yet again, even though I see every competitor as a world champion, I know that I can beat that world champion, right? I can beat that person that's in front of me, no matter who it is, right? As long as they got a chin and I can touch that motherfucker, I know that I have an
Right.
ability to win. So with that being said, it's just like I go out there every time with the confidence in my heart that I'm going to win this fight, right? So, yeah, we went out there and showed out, man, in front of everybody in St. Louis, man. That shit was crazy.
And I think you showed a different wrinkle to your game. I mean, it was grappling heavy. You were nullifying him. You were disrupting any rhythm that he was trying to create and putting him on his back. Now, is this something that you've been developing for a little while to kind of have in your back pocket as you move forward and move up the rankings?
Well, yet again, well, for me, right, a lot of people just don't realize and they just don't do their homework, but it's nothing that was in my back pocket. I always had it. Even when I started with MMA, when I first started fighting, I used to be a wrestler. Like I wasn't a striker, I wasn't a boxer. I would take people down and I would finish them with ground and pound. That was my MO since I was an amateur up until my early days into being a professional. So pretty much we took it back to the old school, right? Young Buck days, right? That was my original nickname, was Young Buck. So cutting off the herd, right? You know what I mean, getting just fresh and everything like that. I really feel like, I was bringing back the old me and really kind of introducing people to the 170 Joaquin Buckley. Because people still trying to make me a 185 fighter, right? They still want to say, oh, I'm a middleweight fighter. People don't realize I have more 170 fights than I do middleweight fights. I started off my career at 170. I just happened to fight at 185 because of the opportunity that came, and more opportunities just kept coming and kept coming at 185 instead of at 170, So yet again, I'm gonna let people think what they think, because I think the best way I could be right now is where people have me in their head or in their imagination that I'm not as good as I am,
Right.
and they underestimate me. And it's not just the fans, it's the fighters too with their dumb asses. They underestimate me every single time, and I'm gonna show out on their ass every single time.
Well, do you have a few names that you'd want to compete that you think the UFC will give you in your next couple fights? Like, what are some of those names?
With me, I keep it a buck over it, right? So they wanted me to fight again. They actually wanted me to fight on the McGregor card against Ian Garry, right? I just had two back-to-back fights, going to last minute with Vicente Luque, right? And then going into a last-minute fight with Ruzaboyev.
Yep.
I was like, man, let me take a little break, Like Ian Garry, he a cool name and all, but at the end of the day, I was like, bro, he's not the type of fight that is going to make me a master star right off the bat or right out the gate. So I was like, let me go ahead and chill out. Then they gave me another offer with a little bit more lengthy time in July against MVP. And I said, hell yeah, let's run that. That make more sense. It's going to be in Manchester. Like, hey, look, me carrying that flag out, you know what I'm saying? Atlanta be crazy, right? You know what I mean? So that I was like, that's the type of fight that turned me into a star. But unfortunately, though, MVP declined me and took Ian Garry, and he took that lick, right? But that makes more sense for MVP because at the end of the day, Ian Gary's kind of ranked above me, and it's an easier fight for MVP, right?
Right.
So for my opinion, it's like, damn, I kind of dropped the ball on that. But at the end of the day, it's just like I gotta make sure I'm doing this the smart way, not on some ego shit yet again.
Right.
I gotta make sure that when I'm fighting, that I'm ready. Because Ian Garry been preparing this whole time while I'm coming off two back-to-back camps. Right. Let me tune up some shit. Let me get more prepared for whoever, don't matter who it is, and run it back to, get a fight. So whoever is willing to be open in the rankings, bro, I'm down to fight. But it just got to be on my time.
I'm going to see Gilbert Burns later today. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. Obviously,
man, Gilbert Burns already booked, bro.
Yeah, is he? All right.
He know he booked. He know who he fight. I don't know if he can release it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can say, but we already know who he fight.
Joaquin Buckley with us here on the Anik Florian podcast. If you want to follow him, it's at Numansa94. Yeah. I hate when I hear people say Numansa. Numansa. But I do want to get into
get that right.
Numansa. We know. I want to get into this topic because since your win, and it's important for people to have an opinion of you, whether they love you or hate you doesn't really matter, but you don't want them to be indifferent. But you've gotten into it with a few fighters publicly, certainly my broadcast partner, Daniel Cormier. And part of the reason I wanted to have you on today is because in my opinion, and whether Kenny agrees with this or not, I don't know, I believe your confidence is being miscategorized as disrespect. So real quickly, I'm going to read through the Cub Swanson exchange and then give you a chance to sound off. So
yes, sir.
I thought you wrote something that was just a confident statement about your ability. Not going to lie, if me and GSP fought at the same age, 30, I'd knock out the GOAT, to be honest. And then Cub Swanson interjected, better men have tried and couldn't do it, to which you responded, get your ass on a winning streak first, Cub, talk about better men. And you were doing this in fun with laughing emojis, whatever. Cub wrote, I'll work on that, homie. Go ahead and keep chasing clout. Just don't disrespect the legends of the sport. You haven't done enough yet. Disrespect Nasi. You never once been on my page and you talking nonsense. Fighters fight. And for me, GSP is the GOAT. But in my humble opinion, I'd knock GSP out at this stage of my game. Just my opinion, ho. And you guys got into it from there. So I wanted to give you a chance and a platform to talk about that. I didn't take any issue with really what you said, but it does seem like some fighters out there, feel like you're disrespecting GSP. I took it as confidence. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, like you said, man, it's just a confident thing, right? My thing is George St. Pierre is the one that got me into this whole sport, right? The way that he was not just a fighter, but he was a martial artist, and he studied, each and every part of the element. Because guess what? People call him, one of the best grapplers, but he started with karate, right? With point fighting. So with the transition of George St. Pierre in his career, I definitely have to, bow my head and be like, thankful, right, of how George St. Pierre carried out his career, because that was my influence to do what I'm doing today. But regardless of that fact, I truly believe that if me and George St. Pierre was to fight at the same time, around the same age, I would beat this man, right? Having that same mental fortitude, having that same discipline, right? When it comes to training different arts and being able to be able to do reps over and over again, nonstop. I just believe that my gifts and my talents and my skill set and my mindset would pretty much crumple GSP, right? And with going on just Cub Swanson, I find it funny how he talk about you got to respect the legends of the sport, right? And the one thing that he was talking about, I've been here longer than you have, right? So you got to respect me. Nah, that ain't how that works. You ain't done shit in the sport. Never have you, right? My man been in the sport for about 15 years and has not accomplished anything in his life. My biggest thing is, right, is that how you fighting with the promotion for so long and you ain't even get close to touching the belt. You ain't barely been in the rankings, and he look. This is the only thing that he will probably say he accomplished, right? Him beating Charles Oliveira 10 years ago. That ain't no accomplishment, man. But he the type of individual that would take that and run with it all motherfucking day. And yeah, you could say, oh, well, he in the Hall of Fame for his fight of the year with, De Hoy Choi.
Right.
But the thing was, though, that was a trash ass fight between both trash ass fighters. I'ma just keep it a buck.
Right.
You watch that fight, and you realize what I shouldn't be doing.
Right.
That's just 100, right?
Yeah.
So I just find it funny coming from a guy named Cub Swanson who ain't done shit in their career talking about respect and better man, because he ain't one of them. And then getting on your boy DC, he definitely is a legend. He definitely is a GOAT. He definitely goated with the, double champ status. But what I have an issue with is that why you attacking me, bro? You a fighter that for the longest time has been trying to build your career up to where it is now. And you see another fighter trying to do the same thing. And instead of trying to put light on it, you trying to dim it.
Right.
And you trying to cast a shade over it and trying to stop my momentum. Because there's not one fighter that I believe that DC puts on for that's another brother. And people are, oh, don't put no race into it. Man, fuck y'all. Khabib be putting on for Islam. Alex Pereira be putting on for the other tall dude that got into the UFC, but is also Brazil. It's just a pride thing. You put on for your folks. That's it. There's nothing wrong with it. But DC hasn't put on for one brother in the UFC. But he put on for Islam. He put on for Habib. He put on for Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, Alex Pereira. Talking about Alex Pereira could have been a world champion wrestler if he starts right now.
Right.
Just lying, just saying shit. Just saying shit. But you see how you put the light on them? Why couldn't DC do the same thing for me? He could have went a whole different way about, what he said about my whole call out, which is cool. You can call it the worst call out if that's the case. But you can also incline that, damn, but Joaquin Buckley will put some work on Conor.
Right.
If Conor ever did give him a chance, Buckley could knock that man out. But DC didn't go that route. DC went another route talking about Buckley was talking about Connor's mother and grandmother, his niece and his aunties, called
Right.
them hoes and shit. You know I ain't say that, DC. And then to
Right.
go back on X and call me a pussy and all this other shit, when I know damn well when I see DC, he not gonna keep that same type of energy. He not. Because it's gonna be under that job shit, under that title. When he gotta keep it professional, when I could just keep it as a fighter.
I remember talking about your aunt and your mom in like our first fighter meeting, you know, and all the women in your life. And I do believe in a broad sense that people have been trying to cut you down a little bit, you know, despite your success. So I'm glad that you were able to sound off here today. And, you know, I believe a lot of this really just comes down to conviction and confidence. And I'm really happy for your success. You found the right division. We congratulate you at New Manson 94. My man. Seriously,
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see you this next level. I know it's probably not going to be Gilbert Burns, but the fact that they're – go ahead.
Yes, sir. But before you get me off here, I want to sign this off right now. So DC is supposed to be out there in Vegas, right? For the Conor McGregor, for all that type of stuff. He said he wanted to see me out there. So DC, because I know he probably going to be watching your show, or you going to send this link to him, right? DC, if you really want to, you know, stand on business about Audrey, his mama, you can see me at the PI, man. We can get some work in, because I always wanted to get some work in with the double champ. And we can run it live. And we can run it live. It'll be a beautiful situation.
And we can speed on that and roll cameras, everything else, Joaquin Buckley and Daniel Cormier. But my man, hope you can enjoy some of the fruits. And that was really special for us, even as viewers, to watch everything in St. Louis. Congrats on the dub. Obviously, there's going to be a big name showing up in your bracket, whether it's the winner of MVP and Ian Machado, Garry, whatever it is. So get some rest, and we'll see you back on the grind, man.
All right, man. See you out there, bro.
Thank you, brother. There he is, Joaquin Buckley, New Mansa, joining us here on the Anik Florian podcast. And Kenny, I know some people maybe would take issue with some of the things that he said. And I know you have maybe looked at his strength of schedule and thought perhaps it's a little bit boastful to suggest based upon your wins list that you could beat George St. Pierre. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like, you know, I don't know if other people are chasing clout or what it is. I feel like Joaquin Buckley's just being a confident fighter. You know, obviously he's not afraid to verbally articulate himself. I don't really take much issue with anything that he's had to say, but other people obviously do.
No, listen, I think that he's taken advantage of his mic time, his TV time. I think that if you're going to be surprised that people are going to be critical about what you say, even if, like, let's say he beat like the top 5 guys in the division, there's always going to be someone out there, either a professional analyst or a fan or what have you, that's going to criticize you, right? So there's definitely that. However, I would say there's maybe a certain time of when to say certain things, and you kind of want to time it well, so that it gives you the right momentum and then it doesn't kind of take away from what you're doing, right? Because if I went out there in my first fight against, say, Alex Karalexis, and I'm like, give me the champ, I want GSP, people would just laugh at me, and probably rightfully so. It's like, bro, you beat Alex Karalexis. You have one fight in UFC. Slow down. As opposed to maybe later where I'm like, I want to fight the master, BJ Penn. I'm being on a 6-fight win streak. It's like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. So there's a time and place to do it and say certain things. And, but yeah, either way, Joaquin Buckley and what he's saying, it's good. You're marketing yourself. That's what you want. You want people talking about yourself. And now it's on him to just keep it consistent, keep fighting those top guys and doing his thing.
His call out of Conor McGregor was roundly criticized, and perhaps rightfully so. We didn't lead the conversation on our podcast about the call out. We talked about the performance first. And I don't know if it was the worst call out in UFC history. It certainly led to some sort of traction for Joaquin Buckley. Would he have been better served to call out Gilbert Burns on a hot mic to try to lay the foundation for that fight? Sure. But I don't know, you know, I just have a lot of respect for a lot of these fighters, and they all have different personalities. But I think Joaquin Buckley's doing a lot of things right. And I do think in terms of his body of work, you know, he deserves a little bit more credit, I guess, from his contemporaries. But we got to get on out of here. We got another episode coming up actually in about 48 hours. You can go to johnanik.com right now. Promo code UFC302, 10% off all of your orders for the Anik Florian podcast merchandise. Also, don't forget KennyFlorianMartialArts.com. That site KennyFlorianMartialArts.com getting a complete revamp. Thank you to our guests today, Dan Hardy, Joaquin Buckley, Ray Longo, our executive producer, Code Blue, Cody Bone Marrow. We are right back Wednesday, full preview and predictions for UFC 302, Makhachev versus Poirier. Ken Flo and Brian Petrie will have 8 picks for you on Wednesday, and they will tell you where their action will be for UFC 302. With that, for Ken Flo, I'm John Anik. Thank you all for watching live. Another new episode beckons in about 48 hours. Until then, be well, be safe. Yo, fucking later.
Cornbread. He's cornbread. Like the mix in a bowl, like the yeast in a roll. He's alive, he ain't dead. He's a soul to the bread.